Yvonne, thank you for joining us in the program.
My pleasure.
Yvonne, so were you really spying for the Americans in Afghanistan?
No, in fact I said to my captors, if I am America's secret weapon, then God help the Americans.
So what actually were their accusations against you?
I had entered their country illegally, without a passport, without a visa, and while everyone else in Afghanistan was trying to get out and into safety in Pakistan, they couldn't understand why somebody like me would sneak into their country. And they were very suspicious. It was a time of war, and they didn't believe that I was a journalist, which I can fully understand. But over a period of days we were able to prove that I was indeed a bona fide journalist.
And what were the grounds they left you? They released you. What were the grounds they released you on?
They released me after 10, 11 days on humanitarian grounds. Mullah Muhammad Omar, the spiritual leader of the Taliban, signed a document which was then faxed to Kabul, where I was later held in the final few days, and it said that Mullah Omar was releasing me on humanitarian grounds.
Even when you came back to England, you know, the first controversy, you first created the headlines, as I said in the outset, when you were actually seized by the Taliban, but you created a second set of headlines when you came back, and you appreciated them.
Well, I've always believed in speaking the truth, which isn't a very popular thing to do at times, but they had treated me with respect and courtesy for the full time during my captivity. That isn't to say I wasn't terrified. I was terrified every day, but their treatment of me was quite exceptional, and it deserved to be reported, you know, that I had been treated very well by my captors. But
you have also been very critical of their treatment toward the women in general.
Well, you know, that part of the region, women do have a very difficult time, and I think looking back now it's more down to culture than down to Islam.
Looking down now, you said it was not realized then?
No, my knowledge of Islam was very limited.
But yet your first husband was a Muslim.
Dawood Zarur, the father of my daughter, yes, he was a Sunni Muslim, and he sometimes tried to talk about Islam, and I'd say, I'm not interested, and when I began looking into Islam some years later, I was amazed by what I was reading, and I picked up the phone and spoke to Dawood and said, why didn't you tell me about this great faith? And although we have split up, we're still very good friends. And he laughed and he said, Yvonne, you wouldn't listen to me, you wouldn't take any notice. So there it was, right under my very nose.
It's still surprising because, you know, in one of your interviews with Islam Online with Muhammad Ayub Khan some time ago, he asked you the question, did you have any knowledge about Islam before your encounter with Taliban? And you said nothing more factual than would fill the back of a postage stamp. And yet you were married to a Muslim who was head of a certain PLO operations and was the father of your child. Does it make sense?
I just switched off at any mention of religion. At that point, I had pretty much made up my mind about Islam. I felt as though I knew enough about Islam that I didn't want to know any more. And I regarded Islam as a faith which subjugated and oppressed women. Now I look back and I try and find out, when did the poison start? When did it begin? And I was brought up in the north of England in a little village where you were either a Protestant or a Catholic. There was nothing as exotic as Islam. And I tried to look back and see when this demonization process began, and it began at the time of the Iranian Revolution, when the Iranians seized a lot of American hostages, and the yellow ribbons were all over, tied onto trees and everywhere in America until the hostages were released. And at that time, Hollywood got involved and produced the film Not Without My Daughter. and it was the traumatic child custody battle between Betty Mahmoudi and her Iranian husband. And that film demonized...
Were you married to Daud at that time?
No, but I had seen the film, and that I'd seen it on the big screen, and I'd seen it with my eyes, and then I read the book. And as far as I was concerned, Islam defeminized women, subjugated them, oppressed them. And in fact, really, what I was reading was a child custody battle between two people which happened to cross over into two countries which were...
But isn't it surprising, Yvonne, that yet you decided, you had seen this film, you had all the demonizing influences of Muslim men on your mind, and yet you decided to marry a Muslim man and have your child from him?
He was quite amazing. He was exceptional, and in fact he was an excellent father, very supportive, and so I didn't see him as a Muslim man. I just saw him as somebody who was quite an amazing person, who was a brilliant father, a brilliant person in my life at that time. And unfortunately, like so many things, you know, a few years down the line we drifted apart, and he went his way and I went mine, although we still maintain a great friendship.
For how long you stayed together?
We were together probably for 4 or 5 years.
But that didn't bring you to Islam?
No.
What brought you to Islam then?
Well, after the Taliban experience, I had given an undertaking. You know, I said, if you release me, I promise I will study Islam and I will read the Quran.
But once you were free, you were free not to...
In truth, I would have promised to have learned Cantonese, Swahili. I would have promised to do anything just to get out of that situation. And
exactly.
Yes.
So what made you read Quran then? I mean, you could have actually, that was a prison commitment. You could have...
You know, I've given my word. It's as old-fashioned and as simple as that. I had made a promise, I'd given an undertaking, and so I started to read the Quran, and I was given a Quran with an index in the back, and so I thought, I'll make this easy. I'll cherry pick all the subjects relating to women, and so I'm looking for the chapter on how to beat your wife, how to subjugate
How to beat your wife?
Yes.
In Quran?
Well, you know, this is my twisted idea of what, you know, this religion is evil and violent and oppresses women. And I couldn't believe what I was reading, because the Quran makes it, as you know, crystal clear that women are equal in spirituality, worth and education. And education is so important that whether a woman is married or single, it is her duty to go out and seek education, and if she can't get it in the home, then she has to go out and seek to be educated. And I was amazed by this. I then started looking at the divorce rights, the property rights, the inheritance rights, and
At some stage you said that the Hollywood, reading Quran and the divorce laws reminded you of the Hollywood divorce lawyers.
Well, all these divorce lawyers that get huge big settlements for their clients or spend weeks drawing up prenuptial agreements, it was already available for Muslim women 1400 years ago. I mean, the prenuptial agreement that the Hollywood stars get now, it's the same as the contract that a woman will draw up for her wedding, and even then she has the right to retain her own identity. She doesn't have to take the name of her husband if she doesn't want to. And so there were lots of sort of wow factors that I was reading. I mean, when you think about it, less than 50 years ago in America, a black woman could not sit next to a white man on a bus.